This is part 3 of the weekly review from last week. Actually, we're still doing 11:13 to 11:17. There's 5 events I want to talk about. Joonhee Choi, measuring entanglement entropy in the system, how much information is encoded in entanglement, approximations and extrapolations lead to better measurement. Yonatan Cohen, quantum machines, he's part of Stanford faculty and also CTO of quantum machines. This is how can we classically control quantum computers, pulse level control, and better interaction with the hardware. Christoph Leuze, augmented reality assist people in tasks. Could it be used for training robots? He's part of the neuroscience department and sort of bridges neuroscience and augmented reality. Anqi Zhang, electrode implants for brain through blood vessels. So this is a Neuralink type situation. Very, very interesting. She's a postdoc at, well, no, she's actually PhD, excuse me. I'm not sure she's a professor, but she's trying to put implants into the brain through vessels and then stimulate the brain that way. Jens Kober, imitation learning. This wasn't a very strong presentation, to be honest, but the topic is super, super interesting. This is not even on podcast. It's November 20th, 2023. This is Krim Jelko. For the day, the fund is up 1.8%. The market's up 75 basis points. For the year, we are up 107.5%. The market's up 18.2%. We're outperforming by 99.3%. First of all, I want to talk about is Joonhee Choi, he's professor in the physics department, and his main interest is in how to measure if entanglement is correct. In other words, if you have an entangled system and you evolve that system and you want to use, let's say, a quantum simulator, how do you make sure that what you get at the end is actually the right thing? So he shows this really interesting bubble. So you have Hilbert space. Imagine Hilbert space, this massive circle, and then you have a small prepared system, and that system evolves in Hilbert space to another system. This is what quantum computing, quantum simulation, quantum measuring, whatever you want to quantum is actually doing. And the question is, are we sure that the path that this system has taken, or that we think it has taken, is actually the right path? Another way to look at this is quantum entropy, which is the question of how much information is encoded in the entanglement of a quantum system. So what is entanglement? You have this relationship between several, let's say, atoms or entanglement entities. So they have they have different relationships between each other, and the entanglement is the whole system of relationships between those entities, and that according to Choi, after 38 elements, in other words, qubits, you can't really measure that anymore classically. So this opens up the window for quantum computation. The reason you can't measure this entanglement classically anymore is, in other words, also the reason why you want to use quantum computers, but you want to make sure that the measurement that you get after, let's say you have 60 qubits, you evolve them, and then you have some sort of result. You want to make sure that that result is correct. That's all Choi is doing. So he's benchmarking the system. He's using extrapolation. He's using guessing, in fact, from classical methods. I don't know the exact details, and I don't want to go into it. But I thought it's really interesting in the sense that, look, if we talk about quantum computing in the first place, we also have to make sure that our results are correct. Next is Yonatan Cohen. He's part of the Stanford faculty, but also the CTO and co-founder of Quantum Machines. Now, the problem here is, how do we bridge classical and quantum computing? How do we communicate with quantum computers? What do we actually instruct the quantum computers to do? And there's a beautiful quote in one of the papers that Jonathan co-authored, where they explain why it's so important to have a sophisticated classical system that controls quantum computers. Here's the quote. Qubits hold large quantities of information for processing while in superposition. But upon measurement, the quantum state collapses. Only classical values of either 0 or 1 are observed. Thus, execution of a program represented via the quantum circuit model on a quantum system requires translating or compiling gate-level circuit instruction to a set of microwave-controlled instructions or pulses which enact the desired state transformations or measurements. So what we're doing here is we're actually sending microwave pulses into the quantum system, and we want it to evolve. The microwave pulses are the instructions. These are the physical representation of what we're actually trying to do. So we're trying to evolve a system from one state to another by using an algorithm. That's what computation is all about, right? We've spoken about this on this podcast before. It's accelerated iteration. That's what mathematics helps us do is cut corners, get faster from A to B through mathematics. Computation is iteration. It's just, trying to do all kinds of possibilities to get from A to B. And mathematics helps us to shorten that path. But we somehow have to encode the information that we're trying to convey to the system. And that's what quantum machines does. And they're using microwave pulses, pulse level control. That's one of their big things. I'm going to have to do some research here and see how if they really are most advanced and whether there are other competitors, Zurich Instruments, for example. So I'm going to check into this, but this is not the main topic of this particular episode. What I want to focus on is really the sort of general value of a company like this. Okay, this is a very good example for people who are interested in startups, right? This is a difficult problem in a difficult market with a massive potential. So this is one of those things where if you solve this problem, you have massive upside, but you don't know where you stand. Everybody's going to tell you all the time that they are just about to break through, that quantum computing is just around the corner. Talking to Jonathan, I got the impression that that's not the case. Of course, his presentation was very tra-rah, but then when you actually talk to him about things along the lines of, okay, how many logical qubits can you actually get? Things start deteriorating very fast. Now, what are logical qubits? This has to do with quantum error correction. So you need, let's say, you have 50 qubits, but you need 48 qubits just to correct the errors of the two that you're actually trying to do math on, and those two are the logical qubits. So he said that it's still up in the air how many logical qubits you can have. He was pretty evasive about this. But what I found most interesting actually is his comments about the pulse level control. It allows for faster iteration. They're making custom chips on FPGAs and later on ASICs that communicate with the quantum system at speeds that allow for quantum error correction in classical systems. And there was really an interesting bridge that he made between the quantum system and the NVIDIA DGX cloud. And I think that is really, really interesting, because what we're talking about here is now, we're talking about the possibility to use classical, highly parallel compute to do quantum error correction. He said we're about a year away from deployment. Jensen talked about this in one of the GTCs this year, maybe even the main one in March. Now, this, of course, is a massive potential for us as investors. We've been working on quantum for 5 years now. We haven't invested in anything serious. In fact, we've never really invested in anything that has direct quantum potential. I mean, we bought some Intel in the past, thinking maybe Intel can jump on that bandwagon. That was a waste of time. We looked at Rigetti, but that was private, and then they used a SPAC to go public. IonQ is public, so that's a potential. Unfortunately, yeah, it's just really not what we're interested in terms of investing in SPACs. So, but the stock has done pretty well actually. So that's something that we consider a miss so far, but that's not the point. Quantum machines could be an interesting investment. So let's leave it at that. And NVIDIA, of course, could also bring us a lot of upside if they can help solve quantum error correction. Next, Christoph Leuze. He's a professor in the neuroscience department. He was talking about AI and augmented reality. What he's doing is medical mixed reality. So here's a quote: "The goal of medical mixed reality is to improve patient care by projecting patient data, for example, images, measurements, interventional plans, directly onto the patient's body. This technology enables physicians to look inside the patient to see an anatomy, function, and disease in actual location, thereby improving diagnosis, disease assessment, treatment planning, and procedure guidance." So this is, think about it, you're looking at a person, you're trying to do something, maybe an invasive surgery or whatever it is, or you're just looking at them and you're using AR, augmented reality, to see inside the patient, maybe a sort of a model, maybe some sort of digital twin of the actual body. So you see where things are, how they should be, maybe how they should be, and then you do an X-ray and then you see how they really are, and things along those lines. So it's certainly interesting. The other thing that Christoph showed was his startup Nakamir. Now Nakamir is the idea there is to assist in industrial work. And for example, you have the sort of a POV view of somebody fixing a machine, operating a machine, making espresso, let's say with an espresso machine. Now this to me immediately clicked. I'm like, well, this could be like used for imitation learning in robotics. Okay, we have POV view, we have humans actually doing work and using a camera to monitor the work. Now this is supposed to help humans do the task, but you can switch that around and humans could do the task and record the task and teach robots. So I find that super interesting. Next, Neuralink type implants. Anqi Zhang, Stanford professor or postdoc, I'm not sure. What she's trying to do is inject an electrode through the vascular system into the brain using very small, very targeted electrodes. She's doing a lot of material science. She's doing a lot of engineering here. This is real hardcore engineering. Very interesting for Neuralink, of course. This is an alternative to Neuralink because you're not using invasive surgery. You're using the vascular system. Problems such as fluidity of blood while you're injecting this, of course, immune response, things along those lines. She says she controls for that on rats. We don't know yet how humans will react. She says that rats are more difficult than humans because rats are smaller than humans. So it's actually even harder to implement those things. But really interesting and very, very important. Okay, if this could open up some really important pathways for neurological disease treatment. You could have stimulate people after a stroke. You could potentially even stimulate them to be better at certain tasks. So there's a lot of potential. This is very similar to Neuralink. Last presentation I want to discuss is Jens Kober. This is part of the AI robotics talking series, and he's from TU Delft. His title of the talk, robot learning through interaction. So I think his presentation was pretty weak. He's not the strongest presenter, but I think the concept of imitation learning to me is incredibly important. Okay, how do you incorporate imitation learning? Actually, excuse me, this is not about imitation learning per se. What this is really human nudging, human teaching humans, teaching robots how to do things by intervention. So this is like a coach that sometimes intervenes and says, hey, you gotta hold this racket a little bit higher, or you gotta do this a little bit this way and that way. So I think the most important question to me here is, how do you incorporate this into reinforcement learning? Does it mean that when the human interacts as a teacher that there's always a positive reward, or do you even punish that? How do you this is also quite related to shadow mode, if you think about it, Tesla, where you're driving, the model predicts something, and then shadow mode tries to find edge cases by seeing what the model would have predicted versus what you've done. So you're kind of teaching the robot here also. So this is very interesting. I think this, unfortunately, again, the presentation was weak, so it could have come across as something kind of not interesting. But to me, this is actually at the heart of robot learning, okay? Because you can teach the robot how to do things. You can reduce the action space of the robot, because that's in general what you're going to do here. You're going to reduce the action space by telling, look, you're exploring on this side, don't go there, just stay here, do this, right? And then keep going. And the question is, how do you incorporate this into a reinforcement learning framework? I tried to read some of the papers Jens published, and unfortunately, the way his presentation was weak, also his papers are weak. He just seems to be a person that has trouble conveying his work to other people, but he seems to be very good at what he does, because TU Delft is certainly a big number in the sort of generally in technology and engineering, and I don't know where their robotics team is, but still, again, I think this is from my point of view really at the heart of robot learning, which is, can we teach robots how to do certain tasks a little bit better? And the presentation I spoke about a while ago about the MIT researcher who, in his paper, was able to convey this much better in terms of you define sub goals. So maybe whenever a human intervenes and helps the robot, that this could be by default defined as a sub goal, and then you memorize that as a sub goal, and the sub goal by definition reduces the action space but gets you closer to your overarching goal. So to summarize, Joonhee Choi, measuring entanglement entropy in a system, benchmarking. Second, Yonatan Cohen, so Joonhee Choi, Yonatan Cohen, the names are very similar here. Quantum Machines, CTO, co-founder, and also Stanford faculty. Pulse level control of quantum system through a classical system, bridge classical with quantum computing. Christoph Leuze, augmented reality. He is trying to help in the medical field. He's helping doctors use augmented reality to see into patients, to plan procedures better, to be sure that the procedures are done at the right place, things along those lines. He also talks about industrial solution where you can use augmented reality to help people deal with industrial problems. To me, this was also interesting that you could use his POV type system that is supposed to assist people when they do things. You could switch it around and have the people actually teach robots how to do things. So this is imitation learning. This could be used for imitation learning, which I thought was very interesting. Anqi Zhang, electrode implants for the brain, small electrode implants for the brain through the vascular system, so no need for invasive surgery. And lastly, Jens Kober, imitation learning, not imitation learning, but learning by teaching. So humans teach robots, which is kind of borderline imitation learning. But you see, it's a very subtle difference. You're not just doing things and the robot's watching you. You're intervening with the robot when the robot does something wrong, reducing action space, improving the performance of the robot, making it more efficient. The big question here is how to incorporate this into reinforcement learning. Thank you.